All right, let's get started. I know some people are still trickling in, but we got a lot of stuff to show. So first off, how many people went to Joe Stegman's talk yesterday about the intro to JavaScript programming? So a decent amount of hands. So one caveat I'd like to put in this talk. So we are going to be talking. Basically, we're going to show a lot of XAML as well as some coding. Most of the code, well, actually, all the code is going to be in JavaScript, but the majority of the code, or the majority of the talk, is going to be, focused on XAML and some of the tools. So there's not a lot of code, and all the code can easily be done in managed code as well. So there's, don't think that any of this stuff is just about JavaScript. It's really about Silverlight as a platform, and a key part of that is XAML, and we're going to be focusing on that mostly because that's how you get some of the richness in the media going. All right. So there's really three key points about media and Silverlight. If you walk out with nothing else, it's the three key points. So it's really just about another part of the Windows media ecosystem. So if you... Oh, okay, sorry about that. So, mic technical difficulties. So if you have existing content, Windows media content, if you have existing ways to deliver that content via CDN, via web server, progressive download, or a peer-to-peer service like Skinkers, if you have existing Windows media tools, if you have processes for encoding it, all that stuff just works. It's really just about another surface to play back your Windows media content. Now, as far as presenting it, we give you a lot more really interesting ways to present your media than you had in previous surfaces, because everything in Silverlight is based on kind of vector UI. So anything you can do to any other part of the vector UI, you can do to a media element. So we'll show a bunch of demos of that, and you kind of gets crazy. So if you think about video, it doesn't have to be not rectangular. It can be. Are we running out of batteries on this thing? You want to maybe do a swap out? So you can have non-rectangular media. You can rotate it. You can make it semi-transparent. You can put stuff below it. You can put stuff on top of it. You can clip it. You can pretty much anything you can imagine. You can do with media. You can play back multiple streams at once, have them overlaid. You can really go to town. And then the third point is the way this is delivered, at least in V1, is it's very, very similar to the HTML model. So you send down a markup, which is just XML-based markup in this case, and you script it in plain text. So you send down plain text to the client as markup, and you script it against it in plain text. So it's very familiar to the HTML model for programmers. So kind of along the first point of the ecosystem. So again, if you have existing media, existing delivery networks, existing playback, it all, Silverlight can consume all those streams. And because we're using the standard Windows Media Codec, including VC1, it's a standards-based codec. So we've submitted it to SMPTE, and they've kind of accepted the standard. And so there's a body you can go to. There's a fixed set of licensing fees. It's very cut and dry. And there's also a bunch of different places where you can play back this stuff. So your mobile phones, your media center, IPTV, all surfaces that can play back Windows Media. So we'll kind of dive right into the demo so we can kind of understand how this stuff is all coded up initially, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the functionality. I want you to understand how this all works, and then we can show talk a little bit more about some of the features. So we'll start out by creating a new project. If you get the Silverlight template that you can use on top of Visual Studio 2005, this is a very similar template to that. I just trimmed out some of the tricky stuff out of the template to make it a little easier to understand in a demo. So when you create this sample, what we've got here is just it's a very simple canvas. We basically just have a canvas, which is your root element. It's a container, and then a rectangle. So pretty straightforward. And the code behind it actually just hooks the rectangle's click event and shows an alert. So if we run this real quick, this is kind of just the basic thing. You've got a rectangle, and when you click it, you get an event. So nothing too revolutionary there. But now let's start to add some media. So we've got a movie here, the Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard, the new Die Hard 4 movie, which everyone's dying to see, right? So we'll drag that in here, and then we'll comment out the rectangle. And we'll add in a media element. So you'll notice you get IntelliSense on the XAML inside of Visual Studio, which is pretty nice. So we'll set the source property and the media element, and we'll set this to that Die Hard movie we just dragged in. So media element is the core of how media works inside of Silverlight. Media element is what happens. You can you can think of it as a lookless video player. It's just a surface, and you can fill it with any media, or you can have you can use it to play back audio as well, and it won't show any UI. And so then using other vector elements, you create the UI around your media player, and you start to script against that to add functionality and build up transport controls. So we'll see some of that as the talk progresses here. But the first thing we'll do is we'll set the source property, and that's really all you need to do. And run this again. A little volume on that. There we go. So I know everyone's anxiously awaiting July 4th to see the new Die Hard movie. So anyways, we don't need to watch the whole trailer. You guys all know what happens. Bruce Willis wins in the end. Okay, so because this is all part of the same vector tree, so media, text, animations, of course vector UI are all part of this tree. So anything you can do to any of those other vector UI, you can do that to a media element. So let's take this rectangle and we'll put it on top. Oops. We'll put it on top of the media element, and then we'll position it so that it's centered in the media element. So because this video is 320 by 180, the media element, if you don't give it a size, it naturally assumes the height and width of the video. But you can set the size, and it'll scale the video as well. So we'll set canvas.left, 120, canvas.top to be 50. So this will be centered in the video because we have an 80 by 80 pixel or square. And we'll also make it semi-transparent. So we'll make this 0.5. opacity. So now we run this, we see the same experience, but we've got a piece of vector UI over this. So it's not revolutionary, but we'll make this look a little better, and you can start to see what you can do with this stuff. So the next thing we're going to do is show that your video doesn't have to be rectangular. You can start to do some interesting things with it. So we'll start out with a render transform on a media element, and we'll rotate it. So rotate transform. Angle, we'll set this to 45. And we're also going to set the render transform origin to the center of the video. So this just means 0.5. So these are relative positions. So we're basically the center of the size of the video. We're setting its render transform origin, so it'll spin around the middle. So you notice how that jumped in? That was because before the media is initially open, the media element doesn't know how big it is. So there's an event called media open that when that fires, the media element says, okay, my natural size is this and this, and only that point can it calculate the render transform origin and slide in. So to avoid that flicker, we'll actually set the height and width here. So say 320. Oops. So now when we have that in, it won't flicker. So the next thing you can do is you can add an animation. So I won't make you watch me type all this code in, but basically this is a pretty straightforward animation. So what this is basically it's saying this animation is going to start on the loaded event of the canvas, and it's going to go forever, and it's going to target the rotate transform, the angle property on the rotate transform, and it's going to basically rotate it by 360 degrees over 20 seconds. So we need to name our transform because that's how the animation is targeted. So now when we show this, we'll have spinning video with a semi-transparent overlay. So you see how this starts to progress into, you can do some really interesting things that you really can't do with something like the media player ActiveX control. So that's interacting with the XAML itself, but how does this interact with the web page? So now we're in the HTML file, and basically, you've just got some script that we're using to program against this, and the div, and this is where the Silverlight control is hosted inside of this div. So if we go to the design surface, we'll add a background image to the HTML page. So drop that into the project, hit F4, get the properties window, pick this grass JPEG. I did a Flickr search this morning, found some grass. So now you see when we run this, you've got kind of the area, and that hole in the page, that's where the Silverlight control is. And so it's good for visualization purposes, but we don't want to see that big white block. So we'll go back into the code that actually creates the Silverlight object, which is right here, and pass in parameters, and we'll add 2 new parameters. This one's called isWindowless. And this makes it so the control basically doesn't have an H when it is transparent to the web page. And then we'll set the background color to be transparent. So this you can type in any color you can use in XAML. So any color you get out of Blend, you can just drop in here, or you can use all the named colors from HTML. So now you see that the control is transparent to the web page. So we basically have the background image of the web page is passing through Silverlight control, and we're rendering media on top of that. It's rotating with a semi-transparent overlay. And to get absolutely ridiculously gratuitous, we'll make the media element itself transparent. So now you see semi-transparent video with a semi-transparent overlay, rotating. So obviously this is not going to be a great experience to show your users, but it just kind of shows that there's not a lot of limits with what you can do with media. Nice. So now we'll add some interactivity, and we'll try to make this a slightly more reasonable experience. So we'll nuke the animation for starters, kill the transform, close our tag here, and we'll lose the opacity as well. So there's a couple of really interesting properties on media element. The first one we're going to talk about, I guess the most interesting property is the first one we set, which is source. And that basically sets the source of the media element. And as soon as you set the source, it basically starts downloading and playing the video right away. And if you set autoplay to false, its default is true, it will start downloading the video right away, but it'll pause it on the first frame. So this is kind of how you get the YouTube behavior where you see the first frame, you're still downloading the video, but it's not playing back initially. So we're going to set autoplay to false, and we're going to use the click event of this rectangle to start video playing back. So we're also going to give the media element a name so we can script against it. Okay, so now we'll go over to the JavaScript file. It's adding some interactivity here. So this is a pretty simple JavaScript file here. And what we're doing here in this in the initial load event that came with this template is we were basically grabbing the root element, which is that root XAML canvas, and we're walking the DOM, and we're getting the first child, and we're just hooking its left button up, which is roughly equivalent to a click event. We're pointing it to a function pointer. So because we rearranged the tree a little bit, that element is the rectangle is now the first element, not the 0th. And so we're basically going to hook its left button up event, and instead of calling click, we'll start the video playback. So because we named the media element, you can start programming against it in JavaScript. So every element, so when you get a mouse, basically any event handler, you'll get a sender. And the sender typically is the element that raised the event. So in this case, the sender is the rectangle itself that is causing the event. So all the elements have this method called findName on it, which is equivalent to document.getElementById. So we're going to fish out that media element that we named, and we're just going to call play on it. And then because the sender is the rectangle, we want it to hide when we're playing it, when it's equivalent to be kind of a play button. We'll set its visibility to hidden, just like you do in HTML. So now when you see this, it's stopped initially because we set autoplay to true. And when you click play, when you click the button, it's kind of like a play button. It starts playing and the video goes. So that's kind of the initial little bit of interactivity. And you can start to see how that would, you could start to build out an actual transport UI built on that. So let's kind of show you what the different APIs on media element are. So I just blasted all these on here. So the properties kind of in interesting order, we've got the source property, which we already talked about. That's how you set the source. We talked about autoplay as well. Balance volume and is muted, and those should be pretty self-explanatory. How you pan from right to left, set the volume, and mute it. Position is the position in the stream. This is a read-write property, so you can tell. That's how you tell how far the playhead is, and it's also settable. So that's how you seek, essentially, is by setting the position. Buffering time and buffering progress. Buffering time is how much of the video, it's in seconds that you buffer before playback starts, and buffering progress is the percentage of that you've buffered of the time. So if you set buffering time to 0, we will start playing at the first frame. We won't wait for any video to be downloaded. So you typically want some buffering time. It defaults to 5 seconds, which is what it defaults to Media Player. But if you want to set it to less than that, you can. Download progress is, again, pretty self-explanatory. So you basically use buffering progress and download progress to create the typical transport UI where you have one bar that goes for download progress and the one on top that shows position. Markers is a collection of basically markers and script commands that are inside the video, or they can come from a live video stream. So you get an event, which we'll talk about in a second, called marker hit. So anytime you have a script command or a marker, you'll get an event when you hit that, and you can start to program against that. So a scenario might be that you've got a marker coming from a live video soccer game, a feed of a soccer game, and it says, okay, there was a goal, so go get this ad. And you could go do a request for the image, and then you could overlay that on top of the video when you hit a marker. So it starts to add some interactivity with your video. So stretch and natural video width and height height isn't a word, are the properties that control how the video is presented. So if you don't set the height and width, the height and width will default to natural video height and natural video width. And then if you set stretch, it defaults to uniform. If you set it to fill, it'll basically fill whatever shape you give it, and it'll screw up your aspect ratio, but sometimes that's what you want. And you can also set it stretch to none, or you can set it to, there's 2 different stretch modes that maintain the aspect ratio. There's one that says fill to the width, and one that says fill to the height. Keep screwing that up. And so the events that correspond to the media element, you've got the buffering progress changed event, which is pretty obvious. As buffering progress happens, you get notified, so you can change your UI. Current state changed is interesting because as things happen to the media element, the state of it changes. So if you call play, once we've processed the play command, you get a current state change and says now you're playing. When you call stop or pause, the same kind of thing happens. And also you get notified when buffering happens and things like that. So current state change is a handy event to have. Download progress changed, again, pretty straightforward. Marker reached is what happens when it sees a marker inside the stream. You get basically that event. And then media opened is when things are ready. So when you set the source property, many of these properties are kind of not ready yet, but as soon as you get the media opened, you can check the duration, you can check the natural video width and height to see how big the video is and start to set up UI around that. And of course, media failed. If you give it a bad URL, if it's a format we don't support, you get that event. So that's just a quick overview of some of the APIs and how you would build up start to build a transport UI around that. So the next thing we want to do is we want to kind of set this up so if you click on the video, it pops into full screen mode. So the first thing we'll do is we'll drag in a better video that's a little more, it's going to look a little better in full screen. So this is what I'm dragging in here is it's a 720p video. It's a 4 megabit stream. It's about 50 megs. This works on the Mac too, by the way. So we'll start out by going back to the XAML file. And we'll change the source property to use this guy here. So now we'll see the new Fantastic Four trailer, which is a little more interesting because you don't know how that one ends. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a click event or a handler to the media elements mouse left button down. So again, we'll use this root element, which is we get from the loaded event. And we'll find the media element. And then we'll hook an event, so we'll just steal this code here. And we'll call this handle media clicked. Okay, and then we'll copy our handler here. And we'll call full screen on the plugin. So also on every element is a method called getHost. GetHost is your shortcut to the plugin. So GetHost basically gives you back the Silverlight plugin. So anything on that you can start the programming against. So here we'll say content and then full screen. It's true. So now when we click on the media element, it's going to basically go full screen. So we'll click on the rectangle. Oops. You know what I did? No higher. Yeah. I know. There we go. So now you're going to we click full screen. So here's the problem, right? We click full screen. When the Silverlight plugin goes full screen, we give you the whole screen to paint on. So you have to handle that layout logic. So we could just default to putting the video full screen, but you want the opportunity to maintain your transport controls, maintain your branding. You want to be able to create a custom full screen experience. So we give you the whole screen to paint on. So I'm going to drag in an event handler here that handles the full screen changed event on the plugin, and we're going to make the video full screen. So what we've got here is some pretty simple code. We're basically checking to see if the control is full screen, and if it is, we're setting the media element's height and width to be the height and width of the screen. And then we have to wire up this event as well. So the control, which is the plugin, it gets passed into the loaded event. And we'll give it that method. Okay, what did I screw up this time? Tell you, when I was practicing this earlier, everything went great. Shocker, right? There we go. Let's just do this. Now we're playing back this is 720p video through the browser, all in Silverlight. So it's as you can see, it's some pretty high quality video here. It's this guy's about to explode.
Johnny, I just bought this tux.
Okay, I love this part. Anyways, I was given a similar demo to this to some partners, and I was so engrossed in the video. Like one of the other guys was like, "Dude, move on. It's time to go." So I like my comic books. What can I say? So again, it doesn't just work in IE. So we'll open this up with Firefox. Oops. I want to browse with. There we go. There's the media open event. It pops right in. So again, 720p video playback. It's a really high quality video you can start to play back and deliver with Silverlight. So, and one more thing as far as gratuitous goes, we've got to show this demo. One of the folks on our test team wrote this. We call it Silverlight TV. So this is going to load a couple of different live streams off. So I hope it looks like my network connection works. So this is actually playing back live streams from the internet. So we'll see how well the connection
pitch,
works.
I get that, but the only problem is you may only get 5 innings.
Wait for it. There we go.
But they may be 5 really good innings. I don't like 5 innings. I'm not backing off on
video
that.
playback at a time.
But there is a chance you only get 5 innings. But let's compare use to Pelfrey. I don't want to turn this into a Yankee Met thing. But Pelfrey's going out there and giving 5 bad innings.
You can do it full screen too.
Every time
all right, so this is kind of a really nice experience to show how you can maybe have a channel changing experience, right?
Somewhat similar.
A billionaire
you can just, basically toggle between the different streams.
Sports business reporter Darren Ravel has this.
The other thing that's interesting,
story.
I like to show off here.
Luck and
so I am just running this on a laptop.
haven't had much in common in recent years. The 29-year-old has less than 10 innings of big league
playing back 10 video streams, and we're what 50%, 60% CPU steady state. So it's a fairly efficient way to deliver lots and lots of video at once.
But Luck met the pitcher.
So cool. So now that you kind of see how things sew together and how things work, we can talk a little bit more about features. So as far as features go, one of the key things that's I think really important to get is that it's completely self-contained system. So the plugin, the beta plugin right now is about 1.4 megs. It's got everything you need to play back video. So it's got its own video pipeline. It's got its own video copies of the codecs. It's got the XML parser. It's got all the animations, all the rasterizing stuff. It's got pretty much everything you need in that one small install. So it doesn't have any dependencies on any other part of the system. As you saw, you can do some pretty ridiculous things with vector UI around video. You can do non-rectangular, semi-transparent overlays, lots of things like that. Because you have vector UI to present around the video, you can use that to create your own customized branded transport controls. You can use progressive download or Windows Media Services to deliver media to this player. So again, any way that you deliver media today, you can continue to use that. We support markers and script commands, so those can be in the video file itself, or in the current beta, they have to be in the video file, but we're working on adding support from live script commands, so that'll be in the final version. We support playlists using ASX, so we have a subset of ASX support, so not all the tags will work, but we've kind of scrounged around and we kind of support the most common tags that most people need. As far as closed captioning and accessibility goes, the Expression Media Encoder team, who James is here, you can talk to him about this later. They've used the script commands infrastructure to build up a closed captioning kind of infrastructure around that. And I'll show you how that works a little later with Expression Media Encoder. But basically, we've put the GUI in the platform so that folks can do things like create their own closed captioning system, and the Expression Media Encoder team is basically taking advantage of that. As far as delivering media goes, again, if you use MIX07, there's that new bandwidth throttling plugin. So one of the things about media delivery is it can be expensive, and the stats are pretty ridiculous as far as how much video folks watch from an average click on YouTube or something like that. So if there's a way that you can throttle how much bandwidth folks use to only deliver the video they watch, it's a pretty nice thing. And the new bandwidth throttling plugin in MIX07 lets you do that. It's as well as using a Windows Media Streaming box will do that as well. As far as looking forward, in the 1.1 release, we're going to be adding alpha video support, which is basically a way to have a video stream with an alpha layer in it, so you can have kind of the talking head or guy walking around scenario on top of your experience. And we're also adding some content protection in V1.1. So if you guys want to chat about that or have questions about that, I'm not going to talk about it now, but we can chat afterwards about those features. As far as the plugin, the media formats that are supported inside of Silverlight, we've got Windows Media Video, Windows Media Audio, and MP3. So it's Windows Media V7, 8, and 9, which is V9 is VC1. They're the same. They're synonymous essentially, and MP3. So it's a pretty decent set of media formats. And then the tooling you used to show this, I mean, obviously you just saw a lot of Visual Studio there, to tweak some of the, writing some XAML and writing JavaScript. But there's much better ways to write XAML, and that's Expression Blend, which I'll be showing next. And there's also Expression Media Encoder, which is it's a great tool for creating media around that's optimized for Silverlight, as well as some Silverlight experiences. So Expression Media Encoder is a really cool tool. You saw it some in the keynote yesterday morning, and I'll be showing it some more in a few minutes. So now we'll jump to some more demos, because no one likes to see PowerPoint slides. So jump back to the laptop here. Oops, wrong one. So we'll start out by taking that same experience we just created, and we'll make the play button look a little better. So we'll open up that project, what was that thing called? Silverlight Intro 5. All right. So the cool thing about Blend and Visual Studio, which you guys have probably seen like 5 or 10 times now, is that they both talk the same project system. So you can open this and it's the same XAML file, but now you've got a nice design surface that you can see, and you can start to tweak the XAML. So we'll start out by trying to turn this into a proper play button. So that's going to take more than one vector element. So we'll group these into a canvas. And first thing we'll do is we'll select this rectangle, and we're going to try and make a glassy looking play button, because that's what all the kids are doing these days. They want the shiny. So we'll start out with a stroke. Nice white stroke. Semi-transparent. Take the fill. We'll make a little gradient brush action. Transform the gradient brush. I want to make this thing 100% opaque. And then the bottom gradient stop will turn white. We'll make it transparent. Oops, 0. About there. Create another couple gradient stops. Make that one white. Say maybe 40 something. Starting to look a little glassy. Listen, I'm a designer. I care about this stuff. Actually, I do like to play a designer on TV, but I'm not quite as talented as some of the folks in the crowd that I've worked with before. So we'll add another rectangle here, and we'll try and create a little inset, like an etched in the glass. So we don't need a fill. We'll make this one transparent, and we'll just make this a little smaller so we can inset it. So now it's starting to look a little etched in. That black is still too black. I'll make another rectangle here. So we'll make this one white. Oops. So that's starting to look a little glassy. Let's zoom in. You can see it a little better. That's, ship that with Vista, right? Okay, so now we'll add a play icon. So we'll drag a rectangle. We don't need it to be rounded. Or stroke. We got the green background on the grass, so we'll make it green. Wait a sec. That's good enough. I lied, we do want a stroke. We'll make it black. And so then there's this really cool convert to path functionality, which basically takes your square and turns it into a path. So you can freeform edit the points. So what's the best way to make a square into a triangle, or a square into a triangle? Lose a point. So then we'll select it. There's a play button. So now so edited the same project. Now if we go back to Visual Studio, it's going to say, hey, you edited my XAML file. Actually, we haven't saved it yet. There, now you edited my XAML file. So basically now you can run this from Visual Studio, but you can also run it from Blend, because Blend also has the file-based web server built in. So now we've got basically a much better UI, at least by my standards, I suppose, for a playback button. And again, it's the same functionality. You get the same full screen experience. So now let's add an animation to this so we get a little more of a mouse over effect. So we'll call this one play enter. When you enter, the mouse enters the play button. And we'll just tweak the gradient stops on this main rectangle here, so we'll move these guys a little closer together. So you see something a little bit like this when you mouse over it. Then we'll create another one called play leave. And so we'll snap a keyframe. And then we'll go recreate that starting state again. So now when you leave, you'll see something like that. So now we save that again. And we go back to Visual Studio, and it's going to say, hey, whoa, you changed my XAML. So yes, we want to reload. So now we're going to add the code to basically trigger those on event handlers. So we're going to do mouse enter, mouse leave on this, and hopefully I can get this one right this time. Actually, let's get rid of this stuff. This code a little more compact. So now we'll copy that event handler, and we'll add two more. So let's call this mouse enter and mouse leave. Now, because we named those animations in Blend, you can just do a find name on the animations as well, because it's all part of the one unified tree, right? So we'll say find name. Oh. Wish I could code like this in real life. You guys straighten me out. So we'll find the play enter. Actually, that was leave, isn't it? And we'll call begin on the animation. And we'll do the opposite of here. So now you've got a nice little animation effect on the button. And again, you get the same functionality. So again, this is kind of showing off. You can start interacting with the designer developer workflow to start to create your own media experiences using Blend. So there's one other really cool feature that we added called Video Brush. And what this does is it's pretty much like any other brush, and it lets you fill up any arbitrary shape, any vector shape with a chunk of a media. So to kind of show off how this works, we'll do a little brush magic in Blend here. So we'll create a new project, and we'll just create a rectangle. So we'll say this one is what's about half that video size is 160 by 180. And we'll give it a nice gradient brush. A little of that. We'll tweak this one instead. So it's stroke to null. So then we'll select this rectangle and copy it. Put them right next to each other. So what we've got here is two elements right next to each other, sharing, basically they have copies of the same brush. What we want to do is basically edit the XAML to make it so it looks like you have one continuous brush across the two rectangles. So to do that, we're going to add a translate transform to the linear gradient brush. And we're going to offset each one by half the width so that it looks like you've got one continuous surface, which you guys may be able to see where this is going. But basically, we've just created something, a surface that's composed of two elements that is the same width as the video. So you can transform. We'll say x equals 80. And we'll do the opposite here. So now you see we've got two different elements, but they both look like they're sharing. They look like one continuous element because we've just transformed the brushes. So now let's add an animation here. So we'll move this one. We'll change its top to be 0, and this one's to be 300. Then we'll change this top to be 0, and this one's to be 300. And at 2 seconds, we'll have them both be even again. So now if we run this, you'll see they just kind of cycle back and forth, which is kind of cool. But wouldn't it be cool if that was filled with a video? That's right. So we'll add a video to the project. Oh, my favorite Die Hard trailer. And we'll add a media element to the scene. And so we'll set the media element's properties. We'll set its source to be that movie. Set its opacity to be transparent, but it'll still be playing. And we'll go back to the XAML and we'll change those linear gradient brushes to be video brushes. So change this to video brush. You need to point a video brush. It has to get its media from somewhere, so you give it a source name, which is the name of the media element, which we actually haven't named yet, so we'll go do that. And then we want it to not stretch, so we want it to basically represent the part of the video that it's representing. So we're going to say stretch equals none. And we need the transform. I'll copy this down here and change the offset. -80, and we'll name our media element. Now, we need more of that. We need more of that. Let's get this to repeat a couple times. I always manage to put a repeat, or an as and repeat behavior. So now you're seeing that we're playing this video across essentially two different shapes because we're sharing the same brush. So again, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. Video is just like any other part of the vector UI in the Silverlight tree. And then one more thing, again, with the gratuitous demo that takes it to 11. Again, this was shown in the keynote yesterday, or a very similar version of this. So, you could have two parts of the video in two parts, or you could have it in lots of parts, right? You could have it in like 70 parts. So you can see, we've broken this video into 70 different chunks here. So it's a pretty good tech demo. It's not the best game. Turns out it's pretty hard to solve a puzzle that's moving. But I've got a cheat button here, so it's nice. Tell you what, though, the corners are easy. Got those. All right. We don't need to name the network. All right, so we'll jump on to the other machine here, and we'll start to talk about Expression Media Encoder. So, we just showed Blend and Visual Studio kind of working together to tweak video and media, and now we're going to use Media Encoder to start to produce some of that video. So this is the Expression Media Encoder UI. It's nice and slate gray like the rest of the Expression suite. So we're going to import a video. So we'll use the AVI version of that Fantastic Four video. So this is a really big video. It's uncompressed AVI, and you've got your standard. Wow, that's loud. That's a little better. And so, it's kind of, it's a standard tool for, transcoding. So you're going to want to have a bunch of different options for how you encode the video. We'll do some high-speed stream broadband. So we're going to have a slightly bigger version of it. A couple cool things about this. You can basically do. By clicking a button, you can add a leader video. So if you wanted to kind of do a pre-roll ad, so now you've got basically a pre-roll ad, just with 2 clicks. So we can shamefully use the Silverlight logo as a pre-roll ad, and then it jumps right into the video. And that'll all be transcoded with your same settings. You can add a trailer video if you want. You can also do an overlay image. So with Silverlight, there's a couple of options, right? You could just have the image is a part of the vector tree and just put it over the top of the video, or you can burn it into the video. If you choose to burn the video, you'll probably get a slightly less high fidelity image, but it'll be stuck with the video. So if someone grabs your video, it'll always have the image burned into it. Just kind of handy. You can also do cropping. So if you want to resize or rescale a video and mess with the aspect ratio, you can do that as well. And probably my favorite part of this tool is the fact that it outputs to a Silverlight skin. So basically, you pick your input video, you choose your format, your pre-roll ads, and then you can choose a bunch of different skins to output to. So you can do this one. You've got something that looks like Media Player. I think one looks like the Xbox UI. So there's a bunch of different skins you can output to. So this basically gives you all the XAML you need, all the JavaScript, and a couple other tricks, and it basically just dumps that into a directory, and then you could just put that straight to a web server and start to play that back. So the other thing, if you use these output skins, is you can start to put markers in the video. So you can pick a couple cool scenes, like let's say that. Let's make that a marker. And then when he's taken off, we'll make that a marker. That's pretty cool. New marker there, and then one when he's in space. Make that a marker. And so each of these markers becomes a marker in the video stream, which raises that marker hit event. And if you click this box, it generates a preview thumbnail. So when Media Encoder generates a preview thumbnail, every single one of the Silverlight skins has UI to basically display those thumbnails as a list and use that as kind of a way to navigate between the video. So I'm not going to show you the transcoding because it takes a bit, because I'm running this on a laptop. But one of the sample outputs basically looks like this. It gives you a bunch of the marker thumbnails. It gives you the XAML and the HTML file you need. And so when you click to run this, you get a nice skin with your pre-roll ad. You have basically some nice UI. You didn't have to do anything for this. It's basically built into the encoder. And you've also got different chapter navigation points that were generated from those markers. So everywhere you click to generate markers, it generates a navigation point. It's a really cool way to navigate around the video. Basically, this was done with no code at all, right? Just using the tool to output. So that's pretty neat. One of the other cool features that they showed in the keynote, which I'll show again because it is pretty darn cool, is the ability to do A/B comparison. So you can take your main video, which is, in our case here, it's an uncompressed AVI, so it looks pretty good, and you can compare it against, we'll do something pretty cruddy so it's obvious, the difference. So we'll build a preview here. And this progress UI is showing we're building this a snapshot of the transcoding here, and we'll zoom in so you can see the difference. So now you can see that, I guess it's probably not obvious from the back. We'll zoom in a little more. So you can see that this is the kind of before, and this is the compressed looks like. You can see it's a lot more grainy. And if you play this back, you'll see that the two stay in sync, so you can kind of do an A/B comparison. You can also switch to vertically and horizontally, and you can all this slide this around, as you can see. You can really see it's pretty obvious in the bricks. Like right here, the bricks look pretty good, and they're not so much here. So it's just a really handy way to kind of get a preview for how your encoding settings are going to be. And then one other feature that, so you can download this tool today. You can download Blend today. Obviously, you can get Visual Studio. You can get all this stuff as of yesterday, downloaded from various sites. Silverlight.net is probably the best place to start. But there is one feature in this build that's not ready for public consumption yet, but I have to show it because it's really neat. It's live encoding. So Expression Media Encoder can act as a live encoding endpoint and basically mimics a media server. So it's basically an application that runs on your machine and can be a live streaming point. So I've got a webcam up here. Let's see what it's pointed at. That's not terribly interesting, is it? There's a little better. There's the crowd. And so then we'll kick up the quality a little bit. And then we'll tell it to stream. So the way this works is this machine will be acting as a Windows Media Server at this point. You can also set it up by basically using a publishing point to publish to a real Windows Media Services box, so you can actually scale out to a real size deployment. But as it is now, you can basically stream to smaller audiences. Now, if I had multiple web cameras, or I could create another source and I could add a file source. So this UI will basically give you multiple of these, and you can choose what is outputting to your live feed. So it's kind of like a TV station as well. It's pretty handy. So now we're publishing right now. And then if I go open up a Silverlight sample, so this is just one of those sample outputs, but I've changed the XAML file to, instead of pointing to this diehard file, it's pointing to basically the local host out of port 8080. So we're going to be picking up on this stream. It's pointing to basically the local host. So there's one of the reasons this isn't quite ready for prime time yet is that it takes about 6 seconds for the video to start. That's James is working on that right now. This isn't quite ready for prime time yet. But there you go. We're at 6 seconds live. That feedback loop is obnoxious. Apologize. Now, you know, of course, we could just show a video, or we could show live video in a puzzle. Now, of course, we could just show a video, or we could show live video in a puzzle. Okay. I apologize for the feedback. Okay, so that's about all I have. I guess, you know, I could probably give demos for about another hour, but I should leave some time for Q&A. One more thing, everyone should please evaluate or fill out their evaluations for the sessions. We have to ask everyone to do that. It's important for us to gather that data. And I guess after that, thanks for coming. And if you have any questions, we've got the mic up here. Oh yeah, one more thing. We've got the Silverlight posters that kind of outline what's in the framework and that kind of architecture up here. So if you want to grab those, we'll have those up front as well. So any questions? Can you guys go to the mic if you have a question, so we can get that on the recording?
I've got a question about the retrieving the info from the media. Is it also possible to, as you can in Windows Media Player, also get the title info and copyright info?
So you're talking about the metadata inside the video?
Yeah.
So right now we don't expose the basic equivalent of the ID3 tags, but if you put that metadata information inside of your playlist file, inside of your ASX, that is exposed to developers. So there's probably the ideal thing for getting it directly from the media is not there yet. We're working on adding that feature, but you can use ASX to deliver metadata to the client.
Okay.
So you can get it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you have any stream protection features embedded? Like if I want to encrypt my stream or something like that?
Stream which features?
Media stream, if I want to encrypt it so nobody else can kind of...
Oh, content protection?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that we're working on, actually putting in the product right now. So we're working on content protection. We're going to be using Microsoft's PlayReady solution, which they announced at CES. It's kind of the, you kind of think of it as V2 of Windows Media DRM, but it's got a different server infrastructure. So the way you put together the files and package the files is the same, but we're using more of a tuned for live, or for kind of web video solution. So we're not storing licenses on the client, and we're going to be always requesting a license for every playback. But we will have content protection that will be coming later on in V1.1.
Is it going to be like, do I have to pay for this, or it's a free feature?
It's a new feature. We're still working on it. We don't have quite all those details worked out yet. If you want to chat afterwards about it, we can talk a little bit more about that. And we can definitely get you, if you want to talk to some of our marketing and biz dev folks, if your company's interested in a solution, we can start working with you that way as well.
Thanks.
Yep.
Every time I see a full screen video, I see the button in the middle. There's a message that says hit escape. Is that overwritable? Can you make it not?
No, it's not.
We're stuck with that.
It's
nice and everything, but
that one's kind of fugly actually. I designed that one, so notice that kind of looked like my little glass button.
It's nice.
But so we have real designers who have real design skills working on a real one that we'd like to incorporate. But for security purposes, we can't let you change that, right? It'll only come up for a second, but we can't let you change that. Users have to know, and they have to have a consistent way to know and expect that they can hit escape and basically know the message. And so for secure purposes, we just can't take it away.
I understand that you have to have one. It would be cool, just so you know. It would be cool to have the ability to overwrite it, to have your own branded.
So the problem is if you could customize it, then you could make it look like the Windows desktop.
I'm just saying.
So Microsoft has been, we had the security renaissance in the last few years, and the security guys are fairly paranoid. They actually want us to show the overlay all the time. So we're fighting the good fight to have the right mix of security versus.
Yeah, it looks good. I was just curious.
Okay.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
My comment is on the video brushing. In terms of performance, are multiple media objects being created in memory?
What
How
we're
does
doing
that
is
work?
we're basically using one media element and we're only decoding the source once, and then we're painting that to fill the different regions. So we're only decoding the video once. I mean, I was encoding video, streaming video, and playing back at 70 little things on one machine. So I mean, performance-wise, I think that should kind of speak for itself.
Where is your source code? Can we access it?
For the session?
Yeah, for the session.
I'm going to have my slides and all these samples up on my my blog shortly. So.
What is the URL of your blog?
If you go to silverlight.net, it's linked from there. So it's blogs.msdn.com/mharsh. But if you just go to silverlight.net, you can find it.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing, Jared?
Pretty good. Awesome about the alpha video. So all the media samples I've done have been either buffering or loading. How can you tell if it's doing one or the other?
What do you mean by buffering or loading?
Like load progress instead of buffering progress?
So download progress is the amount of downloading the entire video.
Yeah, yeah.
And buffering progress is the percentage of the buffering time, right? So if you say, if your video is a minute long, your download progress is going to be related to the minute-long video. And the buffering progress is the percent of like the default 5 seconds you've downloaded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep.
Great product. I want to know what the client-side requirements are to view this rich environment.
So client-side requirements as far as machine config or OS or?
OS and IE, the IE version or
So this runs on, it runs on XP, it runs on Vista, and it runs on OS X. And it runs on IE, Firefox, and Safari. So Firefox and Safari on the Mac, and IE and Firefox on Windows.
And does that have to be IE7?
No, IE6.
IE6 is the minimum? Okay, thanks.
So it'll run on an XP, it's, a clean XP install.
So the user wants to view a 120-minute video, but wants to pick up where they left off, say at 100 minutes. Is there any way to get it to buffer from 100 minutes
so
on?
If you use Windows, if you use progressive download, you have to download the whole thing, right? That's the limitation of web delivery. But if you use Windows Media Services box, you can use that to serve up. It'll basically only serve what you get. So you're basically talking directly to the server, and over the network, you're basically telling the server, I want the video to be served back from this point. And so because you have a much tighter coupling with the server, you can tell it that I only want the video from here and go forward.
Okay, thanks.
So you can do that with streaming, basically.
Will there be an API along with the media encoder so that you can?
That's a good question. James is nodding his head. So James is a PM on this. He spec'd all the cool features I showed. So come harass him about your media encoder questions.
Another question on the downloading. Actually, it's on the playback. In your events, the list of events for the media element, there was no like playback progress type event?
Yeah, that was position.
That's position is a
position
property.
is basically the number of milliseconds you are into the stream, right? So there's a natural duration, which is how long the stream is in seconds to milliseconds, and then you have position, which is where you are.
Yeah, but the position was a property.
Yeah, it's a read-write property. So that's how if you set the position, that's how you seek. And if you read the position, that's how you tell where you are in the video.
Yeah, but how do you update your play progress? So if there's no event.
I see what you're saying. So basically, all the samples that use playback progress basically have a timer.
Okay.
So because you don't want to update it that often. Okay. Another trick to use, it's a feature we're working on, is a frame, a basically per frame callback. It's not in the beta, but once we get that feature, that's the right time to call it, right? You want to update it once per frame.
Okay, so the timer method is the
timer method is all the samples you see on the internet today do that.
Okay.
Playlists. Can I do server-side playlists?
So no, right now we only support client-side playlists via ASX.
Is that the planned feature, or is it not?
It's definitely something we're looking at to support in a future version. I'd actually be really interested to chat with you afterwards to understand what your scenario is for that, so we can make sure we get it right.
A general Silverlight question. I remember in the earlier builds of WPFE, you were not supporting the 3D elements of XAML. Is that changed, or is that?
That has not changed. So Silverlight still only supports the 2D set of primitives right now. So we're definitely thinking about 3D, but it's in the thinking stage.
It's not going to be in 1.1 or anything like that?
It's probably not going to be in 1.1.
Thank you.
Hi. A question about content protection.
Mm-hmm.
Is the content completely downloaded to the client? And is it possible for the user to copy locally the file, or is there any way to protect it?
So the content protection is going to be the standard, very similar to the Windows Media DRM today, right? So you encrypt the file once. it doesn't matter how it's distributed on the client. You have to get the key from the license server in order to decrypt it.
Okay.
So, the decryption happens in the client.
Okay.
I forgot one. I believe there's an Opera logo on your poster, but you weren't mentioning Opera as a browser. Are you supporting Opera or not?
So we don't support Opera right now.
Is there a plan, or?
I don't want to comment on the plan. We know that we have a few bugs with Opera right now, and we haven't really dug into what the issues are with that yet. I think for now you could say that the Opera logo was a little bit of miscommunication when the poster production. Okay, coming soon. There you go. Depending on your definition of soon.
So, continuation of that. Any planned support for Linux? At least Firefox Linux?
I'm not going to comment on that because I don't like to talk to lawyers. But we definitely get that request quite a bit, and we're talking about it a lot internally. It's definitely something we're considering. So, cool. Thanks for coming, folks.